Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversation with Calvin, We the Species, and there are interviews and interviews. This is a very special interview for me with Olivia North-CROTTY because we've been kind of hanging out together via Zoom because Olivia and I have had a mentor-mentee relationship set up by Rutgers University. Because she does creative writing and I'm a writer, and she's into actually a ton of things, writing, music, art, short stories, composing, and Stacy at RTCM had asked and got us together, and we kind of keep her abreast of things. But she thought it would be a great mentor-mentee thing. So Olivia and I have been chatting for a long time, not quite a year, but we've been chatting for a long time. And we chat even when Olivia was in Ireland a few months ago for second semester. It's a great, mentoring is a wonderful thing because I can jump in and share with things, and actually I even helped Olivia, with an internship, which made me feel really great. But we share the commonality of the written word, and the stuff I'm learning. I'm like a living lab. We just talked about it. Well, she knows with my publishing, I got to do a commercial. I don't mind doing a commercial. I never do commercials, but this is my finished novel. There's a tortoise in my hair, A Journey to Spirit. It's a novel. It's just actually the proof. It's actually ready to be published. All somebody has to do is press a button. It's a pretty intense. It's not light. It's pretty intense. It's auto fiction, which means it's kind of a memoir of the lead character. There are some resemblances, but I've been sharing my journey with Olivia to kind of prep her and prime her. So, and again, I love interviewing and interacting with Gen Zs for the palliative effect, because it makes me feel younger. And the fact that I can communicate with Gen Zs on their level, on our level, I think is a great thing. So without further ado, my opening monologue is done, and best would be for Olivia to do a little bio background, some of the things she's studying at Rutgers, and then we're going to jump into some really interesting stuff, including Mr. Gilgamesh Sir, a short story that's now on Amazon. We'll talk about that. Take it away, Olivia.
Hello, my name's Olivia. I am a major at, sorry.
That's all right. Don't worry.
I'm an English major at Rutgers. I'm also a creative writing minor. I do a bunch of stuff, as Calvin mentioned. I do writing, I do art, mainly painting and sketching, and I also do some songwriting and some music production. The stuff, like the three things that have been published from that, three songs, I've done with my friend Nodan, which has a period at the end of it. And he's a very talented guy, and together we've been able to collaborate and actually write music and make it sound professional, which has been pretty amazing. And we've been able to put it out in the world. So yeah, everything that's happening right now in my life is it's just trying to be setting the groundwork for future, even bigger and better kinds of things. So that's what I've been preoccupying myself with as of late.
Okay. So now we're going to go down the old yellow brick road from the Wizard of Oz. We're going to go down a little bit of a serious road because you've got some serious aspects to you. As a writer and an artist, and you've been doing this stuff, even though you're young, you've been doing this stuff for a while. Do you think you have a responsibility to share?
I think there's a responsibility to, I guess, to be the best version of yourself in what you create to the public. The best version of yourself doesn't have to mean that you're the most pristine version or the cleanest or the most polished. but present yourself to your audiences in a way that one, you're comfortable with, because I think as of nowadays, it's especially encouraged for entertainers and creators to share all of themselves for realism and to be authentic. But you do need a level of space between yourself and your audience, especially online. There's a lot of issues with like parasocial relationships where your audience thinks that they know you very intimately when they do not, because even though you may have shared really intimate details about yourself with your audience, that's still a fraction of the life you've lived. So I think there's an aspect to that where you need to show a real version of yourself, and you have a responsibility to yourself and some kind of responsibility to your audience to be honest, but only to a certain degree where you're actually comfortable, and you're not presenting something necessarily false to your audience. But like, as artists, a part of our art is to be personable, and you're always giving a little bit of yourself in whatever it is you're creating and you're sharing. So that is what is genuine about being an artist or an entertainer of some kind. But then I think there's another aspect, like as a writer, it's it's considering how to be respectful to different groups. Like, I'm going to write characters who have not shared necessarily the experiences that I've personally had, or else I might as well just write memoirs, which maybe I'll do one day, but I write fiction. So I'm going to create characters who have had experiences that I have never had and will never have had. And I have then a responsibility to make sure whoever the characters are, I'm respectful and I'm honest in their portrayal. And that sometimes it requires a lot of grueling research. If I had the money to hire like a content editor, somebody to look at my work and say, hey, be careful with this, or I would change this aspect of it, or you need to figure out more about this, because you do not want to be ignorant, even if accidentally, to any particular group or individual whose experiences you're trying to reflect and take for your own, which can also bring up like ethical questions that you could go into about, like, theoretically, are you becoming somebody else, or your character is somebody else because you're taking from other experiences that are not yours? Do they make them your own, or were they ever your own to begin with? Like, there's all these kinds of questions you can ask yourself, and I think can be useful to ask yourself to figure out what your line is and how you want to do things. But yeah, so I think the line you draw between yourself and your audience and how you present yourself to them includes a lot of responsibility. And then the question of how do you be respectful to people who may not even be in your audience, but who you are still representing to a group of people, even though you yourself are not that person, that character, or that's not your experience that you're giving your characters.
Okay. You're so young. You're so young. When did you develop this passion for writing?
I was I felt very alone in school, like in elementary school and middle school, and friendships were kind of hard to come by for a bunch of different reasons. It was a very small town that I went to school in, so it meant everybody knew everybody, and it didn't seem like there were not many options for friends from the start, because I also had a very small amount of girls to interact with. And when you're of that age, boys don't like interacting with girls and girls don't like interacting because cooties and all that kind of crap. So there's only 8 girls in my class in elementary school, and so it was very, very cliquey, and I could never seemed to at least have a lot of pleasant interactions with a lot of them. I felt very ostracized quietly, you know, a lot of the time. And I didn't have a lot of, I mean, I've had some fantastic teachers, but there's always been some teachers in elementary and middle school who just weren't interested in trying to encourage me to engage with these other girls or encourage these girls to engage with me. So I kind of turned to myself, and I kind of just, for better or for worse, learned to entertain myself. And I, because of just different social relationships I did have with some friends from an early age who had their own problems even when they were very young. So turning to myself and my own imagination as a kid didn't just become a way of entertaining myself. It also kind of became a healthy coping mechanism, because I took the things that I felt and that I was experiencing that I couldn't exactly describe to adults or even to myself, because when you're like 5, 6, 7, 8, even like 10 or 11, it's really hard for you to explain to someone what's going on, in a way that, you know, like a therapist should probably explain to the parents, because they see the kid and they'll help the kid explain what's going on in their lives to the adults. But when it's just you don't really know what's going on quite yet, and it's weird, and you're not sure what language to use because you don't have that language yet. So writing and creating fictional characters, and of course when you're starting off writing young, everybody has like their self-insert character, where it's just you and you're on this amazing adventure with all your favorite other characters from other, I don't know, other worlds that authors have created or artists. You know, like I really got into Marvel, and I was sitting bored in the library one day, and my friend's brother was reading a Marvel encyclopedia for kids, and I picked it up one day because he loved that encyclopedia. So I picked it up because I was curious, and I just read through the different like Avengers origin stories, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. And I thought it was the most original kid to create a story about a bunch of really cool teenagers going out into the world and, I don't know, having battles and with powers, and they were the kids of the Avengers because I liked the Avengers, but I wanted the characters to be mine. So, but each one of them were based on friends. It was also kind of me reinforcing like what friendship should look like, and how people should treat each other, because I absorbed what I had seen in like media and television growing up, and I put that into the characters, and I put the best parts of my friends, and I did have a couple of really really good friends growing up, and I'm still friends with them now, and I put them into those characters too. And it was just kind of like an alternative way of seeing my very small world that felt very cramped and very lonely at times, and it kind of made it brighter. But now I'm at a stage where I am reconfiguring in my own brain how I write, why I write, and rediscovering my passion for it, because I don't necessarily need that kind of safe space anymore. I'm out of high school, I'm in college, and I have wonderful friends, and I figured out the issues that I had with those very early friends forever ago. Um, so now I'm starting to learn that I write because I love people, and people are fascinating, and I get to explore both myself, because I get to take bits and pieces of myself and put them into different characters and see what new kind of person I can sprout from that. If I were to like isolate this one part of myself and plant it and water it and grow it and see what it becomes, what kind of character I can create out of that. And then I get to take aspects of people and or like patterns in people that I've been recognizing and putting them into a character and seeing what I can come up with. And it's kind of like a practice in empathy, because you have to ask yourself why somebody is the way that they are. And you can just create such rich, rich worlds with these people who aren't, you know, they're on paper, they're on paper, they're not real, but they feel real. and that's it's really wonderful. So yeah, so it started as like a way of just helping myself in tough situations as a kid, and it's now become like um a love letter to people, but also just figuring out why some people are the way that they are, because people do fall into patterns, um even if they don't want to.
Correct.
But it's yeah.
Correct. I've refined people into kind of three patterns: red, blue, and gray, neutral.
Mm.
Uh, that's being very um, basic. But anyway, that's so we got your you've done your creative writing, and two other elements to you that began early. Obviously, your the music element and your art element.
Mhm.
Add to your, so you've done music, and you've done art, and that's
Mhm.
all. So that was all part of that picture of you growing up. You delved into art, and you've delved into music, and I'll be showing some of your artwork as I promote this.
Mhm.
Any comments, quick, about your art and the music? Um,
Um, art has just always been art has been different from music, which has been different from my writing. They each are three different creative outlets where I have a different way of sitting with it and focusing on it, which has been cool. Writing, frankly, takes up the most of my energy, um, because especially when you're writing those very lengthy first drafts, you're creating on the spot. No matter how well prepped you are for what you're, if you have an outline of some kind, no matter how detailed it is, you're still writing and creating on the spot, and it just takes, I feel like, a different part of your brain. I think there's just more that has to work to produce that kind of thing than something like art or music, which feels more abstract. Um, and I'm more comfortable with those two things, so I end up actually producing more artwork and producing more music, than I do more writing, even though writing is first and foremost in my heart. Um, so if anything, I'm currently figuring out how to balance out those three aspects of myself, and what I can do with each aspect of each of those aspects. So from writing, what can I do with it? With art, what can I do with it? And with music, what can I do with it? And how does it funnel back into me when I create things? Yeah, so they're each a part of me.
um, Making a circle. Do you feel with these three, each one of itself is almost a career?
Yeah.
And do you think you're not spreading yourself out too thin with these three things? I mean,
Um,
you're young.
yeah, I mean, in a way, I think I am, but I also, because I'm young, I know more than any other time in my life, now is the best time for me to just push it and see what happens with it. Um, I think there's a very irritating push for young people to just figure out what they want to do now. And it's not that I don't know what I want to do. I know I want to write, but I also know I want to do other things besides writing, or put my writing into other creative mediums that would include art and music, like screenwriting or playwriting. Um, like like if you put me in like book illustration, I would love that. I could run with that for my whole life probably. If you
Wow.
put me in, like, I don't know, creating a soundtrack, if only I knew how to read music, and I've tried a few different times and it hasn't quite clicked with me yet. It's a whole thing unto itself, because not just like being able to read music, but to write it on paper and sheet music, that's a whole different thing, and that includes a lot of music theory. um, but if I had the skills and you put me on working on a soundtrack for a movie to score it, I'd probably run with that too. um, and I'm trying to figure out a balance that I think I'll never quite achieve, but I'm gonna aim for it anyways. Of uh, just exploring those different paths, seeing how I can combine them, seeing what they do for me, and just finding out how maybe I can make some sort of income between each of them. But like I said, my heart's in writing first and foremost because I think it's done the most for me, and I think I still have yet to stretch myself and see what I can do with myself. Um, so that's my first focus.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a teacher of career explorations at Rutgers 3 years ago, one of the things I taught every class, in every class that I taught, I would say the same thing again and again and again, that for you guys, you're going to have 17 jobs and 5 unique, distinct careers before you hang it up, statistically speaking.
Yeah.
So you're at a young point, it's a journey.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at myself, I've had 5 careers in the last 12 years, my unique, different careers. So, but anyway, just to take a deep breath and go off topic for a second. I like this question. It's one of my favorite questions. You don't even have to answer it. It's a one-word answer, or maybe 2 or 3, whatever. So here it is. I like this question, and I'll tell you where I got it from when we're done. So here it goes, Olivia. Excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with.
I mean,
There could be
I
a
feel like
couple,
there's such excellent answers you can give,
of
but the
course.
first one that comes to mind, just because I recently read something about, like a book came out about her recently, and I don't know enough about her. Probably like Eleanor Roosevelt, for example, had I think she was somewhat secretive about her life, and she was very likely bisexual, and that's a whole aspect of her life that has only been more recently recognized and accepted. Um, and I would just be fascinated to hear her talk about her life, like just to get more insight into who she actually was. Um, because I feel like I don't know enough about her, even though she was just a very cool person. She was just a very cool woman. Um, yeah, it might be her, and I'm sure if you asked me that tomorrow, I'd give you a completely different
Sure.
answer.
By the way, it's a great answer
Thank you.
because in during the throes of the pandemic, I wanted to find ways to occupy this thing up here. And one of the things I love World War II history. It's one of my favorite things. So I ordered, and I own it, but I watched an intimate history of the Roosevelts, starting with 3 times. It's like it's 6 episodes. It's hours and hours and hours, and it was Theodore, Franklin, and Eleanor. And I watched the whole thing with Theodore Frank, but I focused in the last 2 or 3 times I watched it. I focused on Franklin and Eleanor, and my takeaway from that, and you were talking about 20, 30, 40 hours of viewing again and again, and a lot of it gets absorbed, is she was one of the most remarkable persons to have ever lived.
Yeah.
Remarkable. And the loyalty, and there's so many different issues, and yes, there were other issues with her personal life and Franklin, but she kept Franklin together in later years. She lived in New York. Some really interesting stuff. In her later years, the last 10, 12 years of her life, and she helped set up the UN, the charter. She helped write that. Threw the Russians out in one meeting. They got up and left because they didn't like what she was saying, and she was on the committee to help put the UN together. Just complete, and her views on race and tolerance. She was a factor that kept Franklin in line. She traveled during World War II and 25,000 miles into the middle of the Pacific. And generals were kind of ticked off that she was doing it, but she was she was like every soldier's mother. Just a remarkable, remarkable woman. In her last 10 years, she actually lived with her doctor and
Mm-hmm.
her doctor's wife.
Mm-hmm.
And the three of them bought a brownstone in the city. Remarkable. Just a remarkable. So anyway, I'm carrying on about it because I love your answer.
Thank you.
The other thing, before we go back to work, the other thing is I want everybody to know that Olivia joined us on a climate optimist group. Everything Not Fine. We did a panel on some of the things that scared you the most about climate change, and it was refreshing for me to see a young Gen Z person jump into a panel and be concerned because it's your planet.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you joined us. So back to work. I love this question because I've been dabbling so much lately in AI. But as a writer and a creative person, and I don't think any of us even have a clue what AI is the roads that it's gonna take us down.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Chat GPT?
Well, it's interesting. For my current internship I'm in, we actually use ChatGPT as like a basis for things that we need to get done quickly and kind of like basic professional writing. So just sending out a simple email, and you put in the couple of factors that you want the draft email to include, and then we look through it and edit it. And that kind of thing where it's very simplistic and you use it as an aspect of the work that you do, I think that's fine. Especially because like something like an email where it's up to every individual who's already employed to just pump out an email to ask your boss a question or something like that. That's perfectly fine. We already have had technologies that can do that for you. It just ChatGPT kind of just feels like a second level of it. But I think actually the thing that's even scarier when it comes to AI is artists and the fact that AI could completely replace artists. I mean, AI could probably replace anybody and everybody, which is the problem because you have to then ask the questions, all right, well, it's really powerful and it's not going to be powerful. It is powerful already and will just get more complex. And I understand that there's like a kind of black box issue, I think it's what it's called, where you don't know where it actually obtained the information that it's giving you. And even the people who created the AI cannot figure out where it got its information from because it's just taking from whatever sources it's allowed to use, it's being programmed to be using, and funneling it through into a new answer. It's not actually new. So that's a big issue, and that's an issue for artists, especially because art is abstract and it can make beautiful artwork. It can make great artwork, but it's a bunch of like microscopic human hands on that artwork. That's nobody's hand at the same time because it wasn't a hand that actually produced it. It's a machine that took pieces of a bunch of different people's artistic skills and development and years and funneled it into something that looks great, but it belongs to nobody. And therefore, in my mind, I'm like, if it belongs to nobody, then why should anybody use it? And maybe there's a good answer to that. I'm not an expert on AI, and I'm definitely not going to be the final say on what it should be used for. But I think the only thing that I ask for as just an average person who's going to live in a world with AI, whether I like it or not, is just tell me who's going to regulate it, why they think those regulations should be put in place over other potential regulations. What is your reasoning? And who keeps the regulators in check? It is its own government issue. Where should the government regulate AI? Ooh,
Oh,
it's a question. I don't know if it's ever going to be answered now, even though I think it's something that really needs an answer right now.
yeah.
And considering the internet's already the Wild West as it is, and that's not regulated, or if it is, it's by corporations who are privatized and allowed to just kind of do whatever they feel like doing. And at least in the US, we have a Congress that's a much older population of people who probably are not using the internet at least as consistently or in the same ways as most people in the US, especially younger people like myself, where they probably hear about issues online, but maybe don't quite have firsthand experience with those issues, just because that's not their world, and that's perfectly fine. But then it's like, well, then why should you be the one to regulate the internet, for example? And with AI being maybe the most internety thing that's come out as of late, why should you be the one to regulate AI then? And then, but also, why should privatized corporations be the regulators? It's just, it's a whole new black hole of questions.
Correct. It's beyond anything we can even grasp. It's funny, you're an artist, and a couple of weeks ago, I experimented with a couple different AI things,
Mm-hmm.
and I went into one AI thing and said, I'm afraid. I have this great fear
Mm-hmm.
of AI. So would you draw me some pictures to reflect my fear
Mm-hmm.
of AI? And this is what it drew me.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that cool?
That's very cool.
Those are my pictures that it drew me because I asked it to create pictures for me showing my fear
Yeah.
of AI. And
And
one
they're
of them
great
I actually
images.
used, this one up here, I've used it a few times. The
Mm-hmm.
others are a little gruesome.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, yeah, I try to stay on top of for an old guy. Um, now, just getting into some lighter things, getting away from heavy. I would love you to briefly chat about Mr. Gilgamesh, sir, your short story, which is on Amazon, and I'll have the link for everybody to see. It's an interesting short story. I find your writing delightful.
Thank you.
No, I do, and uh, um, very introspective, and
Thank
it
you.
makes you think. So, talk a little bit about the birth of Mr. Gilgamesh, sir.
Yeah, so Mr. Gilgamesh Sir is the product of me just sitting in my room uh, one day, maybe 3 years ago now, and I I pumped it out in maybe 2 hours, and I was surprised at myself because I don't normally write fast. I am not a fast writer. I'm the type of author who edits as they go, which you can debate how good of a strategy that is. I personally am okay with it. It's just a matter of making sure that I don't get stuck in one place and I'm able to just move on. Because the whole point, especially of a first draft, is to just put something on the page, and even if it's crap, you can work with crap. It's something. A blank page is not something. But yeah, I wrote it quickly, because I kind of already had the scene in my mind as to what it looks like, and what the conversation would entail. Uh, and it was just, I don't know, it was just something that I found interesting. Immortality has always piqued my interest because I think it's a great concept that you can go in a lot of different directions with as an author, or as, someone who works in TV or something like that. And of course, it's not like my story is the most original version of it, but I just, when I'm able to visualize a scene in my head of some kind, even if it's stagnant, even if I don't know what the actual dialogue would be, and you can just abstractly understand what would be happening in your own mind. Um, that feels like that's kind of what my inspiration feels like in the moment, where it's like I see it in my head, and now let me see if I can get it as close to what I feel it is onto paper as I can get it, or with art if I'm doing like my own piece that's not, that's not just trying to like practice using reference or something like that. Yeah, so just the idea of like, well, who would be the one to just accept immortality if it was just handed to you? Because plenty of people would just accept it, but why? and who, like, what kind of person might do that, and for what reason. And what if you didn't even need immortality? What if you had everything that you ever needed in your life? Why would you still take it anyways? Um, and my answer would be probably something to do with your ego. Like most things are to do with your ego, for better or for worse. Um, but especially somebody who was used to being given things, um, and used to taking, and never felt the need to produce anything else. Just people who will absorb whatever it is that is around them and presented that benefits them, they'll take it. And there's a lot of people in our world, I think, who are like that. And they're people who are who were never challenged, whose entitlement to these things were never challenged. Um, and I imagine, even if it seems ridiculous to me, that there'd be plenty of people on the planet who would just take it, no questions asked, because they're used to taking, and they'll keep taking. Um, and it does feel good to write a character who is kind of slimy, kind of apathetic. He's not, the character, he's not the worst person in the world exactly. There are far worse people than him,
Right.
but there's still a lot of him. You read a lot of his type in the news, for example. If they ever get a karma to slap him in the face or something like that, you'll read about them in the news every now and then. But generally, they go unharmed, unscathed, and um, their apathy and their um, decided ignorance towards a lot of things that they could help with because they have the power to help with it. Um, them just deciding to not do anything about the issues in this world because of their apathetic, because they decide to be ignorant or just don't care, and to see them finally get some kind of karma handed to them, it feels good. It definitely felt good to write. It was a good, it was
It's your
an
world.
enjoyable ending to write.
It's
Yeah.
your world to create.
Mm-hmm.
The nice thing about It's a nice thing about writing. I learned when I wrote my first novel, it's my world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the boss. I
Yeah.
can do anything I want to do. It's
Yep.
my world. It's a nice thing about writing. So, um, next to the last question
Mm-hmm.
to ask is you spent second semester in Ireland.
Yes.
A little bit about your experiences in Ireland.
I
Is that
had
your first time abroad?
Well, I'm lucky enough that my parents have always loved traveling. And so once I became of age for them to just take and sweep off my feet and go somewhere, when, we'd be like, all right, we've got the money down, we're good, we have the time, let's go. They'd take me. So I've been privileged, I've been very lucky to be able to go to Europe a few different times. Um, I'd never gone to Ireland, and I'd never done a study abroad anywhere. So this was the longest time I've been fully away from home.
Right, right.
Um, which it felt very empowering to be able to be away from my parents completely. Because at Rutgers, I don't live too far from Rutgers, and I'm to the point where I can commute. So I'm lucky that I can take the train home on the weekends. But that's just, it's not the case because you're across an ocean. Yeah. So it was empowering to just see all of the skills I've built, like slowly becoming an adult, all come together, and just being able to support myself and live on my own, and not like live in a dumpster like a lot of people my age are expected to live, when we're just trying to figure out how to be on our own and with our own experiences, how to handle money to an extent, um, even just little things like making plans to go out with people when you don't have like parents to take you, or you don't have a car, because it's strongly recommended you do not drive on your own because the streets are switched, and the driving seat is switched. So Rutgers was like, please do not drive yourself. There is a great public transport system use that. So I just use the bus all the time. So just no longer having that safety net under me and still being able to just not just live life, but to enjoy it. And of course, there's still support under you. I'm still doing it under a school. I still have my parents' money that I'm using mainly. It's not to say that they're all gone, but just to have that separation and the distance, it was great. Um, and the great thing about at least much of Europe, I'm sure not every single country has the best public transportation, but generally they have great public transportation, at least in comparison to the United States, from my understanding. And from my experience in Ireland, that is confirmed. They had a great bus system. Excuse my dog barking in the background if you can hear it. Um, yeah, it's a great public transportation. Um, I came at a time when there was a lot of inflation going on with food and groceries. So that was interesting because suddenly I was a lot more impacted by it because I was the one purchasing my own food because I lived in an apartment setting and I didn't have like I didn't participate in like any sort of dining system. Um, Going to UCD, University College of Dublin. Um, and on top of all of that, it's just a slightly different system for college itself and for the classes that I adored. They're much looser. I realized how very business minded and intensive um, American universities are, but well, at least UCD, which I imagine can be somewhat generalized to other universities, but UCD, at least when it came to liberal arts, which is what I'm in as an English major, was more than happy to just trust us to do what we needed to do to get the degree. Um, there were uh, there were looser demands of the literal grading in itself. Professors were like, just hand this in, get it in. That's what you need to do. Which you'll find plenty of professors like that in the United States, but it's just more of the consistent idea. It's like, as long as you get this in, you'll be fine. You get it in, you do the work, we can talk about your grades. And they also incorporate a lot more of like just how much you show up to class in your grades. They'll boost your grade for that. Like they take a lot more of you into account, and that's especially if it's like a tutorial setting or if you are in a classroom with a small group of people as an extension of the
Hmm.
bigger class, which I really like. Um, yeah, it's a looser setting, but looser and not in the negative way, but looser
Okay.
in actually a very positive way. So I really enjoyed that, and I'm actually now really considering if I do grad school, I'll maybe go to either Ireland or maybe England,
Okay.
um, where I don't necessarily need a second language to get around because unfortunately languages have never been my strong suit. I wish they were. That'd be wonderful. Um, but yes, that's
Great.
it's really opened my experiences living.
Wonderful.
It's wonderful.
Last question. One of my favorite questions also. Uh, um, it's not, uh, it's a simple question. Last question. What are some of your favorite movies and actors?
Um,
I like this question.
yeah.
I do. I do.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple different answers for the movies. If I had to choose like a standalone movie, it'd probably be like Howl's Moving Castle by Studio Ghibli. I love animation, and it's just a gorgeous film to look at, which is such a simple thing, but it's such a wonderful thing. And Studio Ghibli is known for just how beautifully and intricately done the animation is, and it's worked on. Um, and I like that the characters. It's based on a novel, and I actually read the novel, and it's a good novel. And of course, the novel has the space to explore the characters more. But it's interesting how crunching that novel into a movie makes the movie feel all the more artistic and abstract. And I think something that I've seen people have an issue with the movie is that it's too like the plot is very loosely strung together, but I don't really mind that for myself. Like I don't think every single film needs a very clear specific plot. and I've rewatched that movie plenty of times, and I've also read the book, so I know what the plot is meant to be in the background. But I also grew up just with the movie, and because my dad got me the movie when I was like 10 or 11 because he thought, hey, she might like this. This seems like a nice movie. um, and I've watched it a ton since. So even when I was younger, I just remember loving just the the feelings behind it. And Ghibli's movies always have like just the lightest sense of melancholy and weight
Mhm.
that balances out just the color and how um, wonderful it is to look at. And Howl's Moving Castle, I think, continues that that aspect of a lot of Ghibli films, where there's always a little touch of sadness to it, but it's a beautiful sadness, and you're not uncomfortable with it, which I also think people don't always think about sadness or consider sadness. It doesn't always have to be uncomfortable. You can decide to make it beautiful or to sit with it
I like
and to
that.
contemplate it and to almost like pet it and think about it
I like
in a
that.
way. Yeah, and it's really wonderful. And it's just a part of the feeling of the film, and I love it. Yeah, and of course the visuals are gorgeous. And Howell's a very lovely looking character.
Okay.
You know,
No,
he's
I
and he's
like
voiced by
that.
Christian Bale, so he has a great voice too. So
I
that
like
that's
that
one for me.
description, the sadness thing. Well, uh, we did our thing. We've been planning this for a long time. Uh, the nice thing is you're gonna come back whenever you want to come back. We're gonna be zooming and mentoring and
Yep.
discussing literature and journeys. I think Stacy did great putting us together
Yeah.
because
Thank
by
you,
the way,
Stacey.
refresh my memory. What year are you graduating?
I am 2025, so I
2025.
have
Okay,
2 more years and then I'm done.
just so I know. So anyway, I'm gonna sign off. Don't leave. But I'm thanking you so much, Olivia. But it's great knowing you and doing our little mentoring thing.
Yeah, thank you so
Uh,
much. You've been such a huge help for me. You know,
thank you.
I've taken any help you can get, and you've stuck with me, and I really really appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
And to
much.
be continued and
Yes.
this to be continued. So be well, stay there. I'm gonna stop recording.
Okay.
This was great,
Thank
truly.
you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for having me.